and continuing outperformance. We, in the last year and a half, driven in large part by Denver voters passing Initiative 1A in November of 2006, really did a dramatic expansion to our preschool and kindergarten programs. What that means is a year ago, we had 500 kids in preschool who were attending preschool on a full-day basis. This year, we have about 2,100 kids attending preschool on a full-day basis. Last year, we had, for our kindergarten programs, we had approximately 70% of the kids attended kindergarten on a full-day basis. And as you may know, Colorado funds kindergarten on a half-day basis. This year, we have over 90% of our kids attending on a full-day basis. That makes a tremendous difference, and we believe it is one of the more important things that we can do to have kids start on a level playing field. Over 80% of those kids who attend those classes are kids in poverty. So we believe it's a tremendous thing to move forward, and we're not done yet. Our goal is to continue forward, that everyone who wants to attend preschool or kindergarten in DPS and on a full-day basis, that we can make that happen. We have some funding challenges to continue to overcome, but we're pretty confident that over the next several years we can continue to move that forward, due in large part to the generosity and support of the Denver community. We've had some very other significant accomplishments. In the last year and a half, we brought forth what we call the School Performance Framework, which effectively is a measurement tool for how schools are performing, but also probably more importantly, a management tool for principals and school leaders to see how they are performing year to year and where they need to improve. And what makes this tool, which is a nationally recognized tool, so impressive is it is the first of its kind that looks at the growth of students. It doesn't look at the status, which is what our SAR, or School Accountability Rating, had done. It looks at the growth. So not this year's third graders against last year's third graders. It's this year's fourth graders versus where they were in third grade. And it allows us to take out some of the noise in the system about how schools may be serving a different population of students, or have a high percentage of English language learners, a high percentage of children in special education classes, or potentially a high percentage of kids in poverty rates. Allows us to kind of look at schools who have a similar demographic and see how they're moving. And it showed us some very, very interesting things. And I see one of our principals out in the audience, Dan Lutz from Denver School of International Studies. This is a kind of tool that our principals need so they can target where they're really not being successful, because just being told that you're performing low each year without a lot more data to go on isn't necessarily always helpful. Additionally, we've moved forward quite significantly, at least leading in the country, with performance-based compensation for both of our teachers and our principals. Again, for our teachers, thanks very much to the Denver taxpayers several years ago, we passed the ProComp initiative, which we modified, not the legislation certainly, but our use of it and implementation of it here in the last year, so that we're pushing significantly more dollars out to teachers, but also in sending things we think are very important. Teachers who are teaching very hard subjects that are hard for us to find people who teach, like special education classes or English language acquisition classes. Allows us to incent teachers who take hard-to-staff positions, work in some of the more challenging schools, and to give them performance-based compensation for that, as well as teachers who move their students ahead from year to year from a growth perspective. Additionally, our principals are compensated, and there's alignment in some of their measurements between the teachers, the principals, and our school performance framework. So we're moving down a path where folks have a financial incentive in addition to all the other incentives and reason they do their job that helps them move toward hopefully moving kids ahead more quickly. A couple other things that I would note. We're at our highest enrollment in 30 years. We're over 75,000 students now in DPS and DPS charter schools. We balanced our budget 2 years in a row, and we're going to do it again this year, despite some of the challenging economic circumstances and despite recent approval of the state budget, which it will provide a small but not huge cut versus what we were hoping for. Additionally, a couple of major things happened just recently is PARA merger. For those who have been following the news, the legislature just approved a merger between DPS's pension system and PARA, which is the state pension system where all other school employees in the state, all other 176 school districts in the state belong to. DPS had its own. And what this does is this corrects what has been enormous inequity for years for Denver students in terms of the amount of money that was going in to pay pension costs that wasn't going into the classroom. It doesn't fix it overnight, but it makes a huge change for us, a huge positive change. And maybe most importantly, it creates a portability that teachers or educators who were working outside of DPS or in DPS who didn't have the ability to go from one system to another. So if you were working in Jeffco, even though you lived in Denver and wanted to teach in Denver, but you had 10 years of service, you were making a big sacrifice if you wanted to leave that. This breaks down that wall and allows people to do that, which we believe will over time, again, help us to attract better teachers and more experienced personnel in certain areas. Moving on from the good news to where we stand today, and I think there's some sobering facts that are really important for everyone to know. Today, over 50% of our students are not proficient in reading. Over 60% of our students are not proficient in math. Approximately 50% of our students do not graduate from high school. And there's an achievement gap between our Anglo and Asian students and our African American and Latino students that's in excess of 30 points in certain areas. So while you can feel that progress has been made, and I think we do, you see how long the road ahead is and how important the ongoing effort to move a school district forward is and how critical that is. How we get there and the things we continue to focus on are in a number of areas. And these are things for those of you in business or other occupations are going to sound in many ways very similar to what you do with the exception of a couple. One is a focus on people, on attracting, retaining, supporting, incenting, and managing the personnel in the district. We are effectively a people business. We have 4,700 teachers. We have over 300 principals and assistant principals who day to day work with our kids. Our ability to support them, bring in the best possible people, and help them become successful in their roles is the most important thing that we can really do as a school district, as well as all other personnel in the district to make sure that we're also supporting them and bringing in, having high quality people, but also allowing them to be successful in their roles. Secondly is continuing on with some of our instructional reforms. A lot of work has been done there over the last several years in terms of a common curriculum across DPS, common assessment standards. We're going to continue to implement instructional reforms, provide better tools for educators to understand where their kids are currently at, better assessment tools for them more frequently to understand how those kids are doing and to see if progress is being made through strategies that are implemented, and tools that will actually sit on teachers' desktops that will point them, show them information they need without them running to get it, as well as provide them with supports, instructional supports and strategies to help them go make change day to day and week to week in the classroom. Supporting our school leaders in the work they have to do, providing additional autonomy is one of the other points we're moving on. Obviously, the state passed legislation last year called the Innovation Schools Act, which allowed schools to seek autonomy from some state statute, from district policies, and from the collective bargaining agreement. Several DPS schools are the first two schools to go through that. But even across the board in all DPS schools, that's something that has been trying to provide more autonomy at the school level in charge of their budget, which our principals are the best, we believe, are in the best position to make decisions on how best to use their funds in support of their community and their students, provide more autonomy and support in terms of their staff and be able to, who they can hire and when they can hire the folks who work in their building, as well as how the time is spent in their building so they can dedicate the resources and time how they feel is most appropriate. So moving to more autonomy, less centralization, and accountability for performance. Historically, this has been a system that has been, over the last 30, 40 years, that has grown in a more of a monopoly fashion. And we're not there anymore. And I think that may have served well years ago, but it isn't necessarily the model that should serve us well in the future. So our goal is to continue to support efforts to break down those walls where necessary and help our leaders, our teacher leaders, our principals to do what they need to do in support of serving their students and serving their local communities. Finally, and coming full circle to why we're here today, is the engagement of the community in the work that we do in the public schools. And that includes the parents who work with their students and their support in the schools, but it includes the community and folks like the Rotary Club, folks like the Active 2030 Club who support the Denver Kids program as well. These are incredibly important support structures in terms of improving an overall public school system and making a public school system something you're proud of and an asset to the community. The folks you see around these young people who came up here at the front, they're going to be in leadership positions in our city in the coming years. It's incredibly important that we are we are helping to develop and support them so that they can become those leaders. It's incredibly important that we don't